Hello, and welcome back to another video. I gotta change the beginning of that. I'm really sick of saying the same thing at the beginning, but it's on autopilot, you know? So thank you for being here. Truly, guys, if you've made it this far, give yourselves a big pat on the back, and we are gonna just power on through. We're gonna get to some pretty cool stuff today. We're gonna make a few functions and things like that. But I just want to congratulate you guys and anyway, let's get going before it gets too hot here in the office and I have to turn my AC back on because that no one wants to listen to that. Um, so let me switch over to, well, let me give you just a brief overview of what we're going to do in this video. In the last video, what we do is set up our database. So our database is ready now to save information and retrieve information from our database. In this video, what we're going to do is give our file a little bit of structure. Now, each one of our pages is going to pretty much be the same. It's going to be in the same layout. So I'm going to show you how to separate out some of the codes. We don't have to on every single file. We're not going to have to put in the entire HTML document from now on. We're just going to create a new file. And we're going to do something called including, and we're going to include the head, we're going to include the footer, and then our content's going to be in between that. So we'll do that, and then we're going to set up some functions, okay? So here's what we're going to do. Let me switch over to my screen here. And in your terminal, just go ahead and make sure that you are up and running with XAMPP. Let's see that mine is already running, but yours may need to start up here. Okay, so now that we know that we are up and running, let's just go ahead and go to the browser and just type in localhost / and then the name of your folder, and then we were in the register.php directory here. And here we go. Here's where we left off in the last video. We got this styling done, and we have this registration form. So we're going to continue on doing our logic for our registration form for the next several videos to get all of this working and saving information to the database, okay? So let's go ahead now and switch over to our code. And we don't need this styles.css open, so we can go ahead and close that. And we are going to be working in this register.php file. Now, one thing that we're going to end up doing is, like I said, if you look here, all of our pages are going to be inside of this little window box for now. And so we don't need to redo all of this outside stuff. We just need to change what's on the inside of this. So what we're going to do, let's create some files and just take everything, because basically this is good for everything here and up is going to be the same on every page. And furthermore, these are going to be the same. These lines right here, closing those, closing the page wrapper and the well and the body and the HTML tags, that's going to happen the same way in every file. So we don't want to duplicate code if we don't have to. Remember, we want to basically, we want to duplicate as little code as possible, and even having to remember like to include our styles.css and things like that. We're just opening ourselves up for a lot of possible problems. So let's go ahead and create a new file here, and I'll show you what we're going to do. Right here, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm just going to call this head.php. And go back to your register.php file, and I want you to go down and copy from the div with the class of well, copy that tag and everything all the way up to the top of the HTML document here, and just cut that. And then go back to your head.php and let's just paste that right there. Okay. Now let's go back here to the register and save. And if we go if we go to the browser here and refresh, you'll see that our page breaks. And that's because we no longer have the opening tags, we no longer have the CSS, because now that is not in the same file as this register.php file. But let's fix that. So in PHP, they give us this ability called include. And what we can do is we can basically take the contents of one file and include those in the top of this file with a single function. So we're going to go ahead and type the word. So we'll open up PHP tags right here, like this, and we can go down another line if you want, and we can just type include, and then we're going to give it a path to include. And so this path could be absolute or relative, but most of the time this is actually going to be a relative path here. 1 second here. Gotta get something going here. So to use this include, it's a function that's built into PHP, and so we can just put in quotes here. So it's a function. We're going to open and close some parentheses, and then inside some quotes we're going to tell it the file we want to include. Well, in our case, we want to include the .php. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and give that a semicolon, and I'll skip down a few lines here, and we will close those PHP tags. Now if we save and go back to the browser and refresh, it should look exactly the same as it did before. And that's because if you're including this file, it's going to take the contents of this file and just put them in wherever this includes at, okay? So that technically the file now has not changed. We're just using PHP to include the top part of that file, and we no longer need to copy and paste this every single file. So let's go ahead and do the same exact thing for the footer. So in here, let's create a new file. We're going to call this foot.php. Go back to your register.php file, and what we're going to do is take everything from the closing div of that well that we created there, and all the way down to the closing HTML, and just cut that out. We'll save that. Go back to the head, or I mean to the foot.php, sorry about that. We'll paste that in here. Oops. And it's going to look a little funky because we're missing, a lot of stuff in this files, but it's just closing tags for now. Now you could do other stuff here, like a lot of times you would include JavaScript files maybe down here at the end of your body, things like that. But for now in this project, we're just going to go ahead and leave these closing tags here. And then in its place, back in our register.php file, we're going to go ahead and include, and we can do this all in one line here. So we'll open our PHP tags, and then we'll use our include function. And then inside of here, we're going to put single quotes, and we're going to say foot.php. We'll do our semicolon, and then we'll close our PHP tags. So this is kind of all in one line, but you can do opening PHP tags. We can do some sort of PHP and a closing tag all in a single line. The next thing that I want to do, just to kind of like clean up this page a little bit, is let's go down here and let's just unindent this some. There we go. I'm going to save that now. And let's go back and make sure our browser, and make sure we didn't do something wrong. So let's go ahead and refresh here, and you can see that we are good to go. So that also opens us up to do some boilerplate stuff that we're going to have to do with PHP. Now, instead of doing it on every single page that we create, like right now we just have this register.php, so it might seem a little silly, but later we're going to have like a login page and a forgotten password page and a few other pages, and we don't want to have to remember to do everything that we need to do on every one of those files. So what we can do is in our head.php, we can actually do some other stuff here that'll help us out. So at the top of the file here in the head.php file, go ahead and put your cursor right here and hit enter to give yourself a little space. And on line 1, let's open up some PHP tags. And then what we're going to do is skip down a few lines and close them. So we're going to put some PHP here at the top of the head. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do something called session start. Now what session start does is we need to know or track sessions between users in PHP. So the server. So what's going to happen is it's going to create a unique ID for our visitors of our website, and it's going to store that as a cookie, and I'll show you what that means in a minute. But what we're going to do is it's just a simple function. You want to do this early on in your file's execution. So what we do is we just type session underscore start, and I know you're probably not going to understand what this does yet, and I'm trying to explain it, but it's a little hard to explain. Basically, every single time a file is loaded in a server on Apache, it has no clue that the same user's hitting the server. It basically starts up, executes the script, sends it back to the client, and that's it. So what we're able to do is create sessions, and a session allows us to keep track of that same user between executions, and we do that with an ID. So we set up a session on our server, and it creates a unique session right here, and it's going to take that session and we'll store that session as a cookie on the client's browser. So the next time the client goes to another page, or they go to the same page or whatever, they're going to have that session stored there, and as long as that session is running in PHP, it's going to be like, hey, it's going to know it's the same user, so we can use information from the session and things like that. We're going to need that. We're going to need that quite a bit from, when we're basically submitting forms or logging in and stuff. So we need to do this session start. And let me just show you really quickly. If I go back to the browser and inspect this, we can actually go, let's see. We can actually go to Application tab here. And if we look at this cookies, so there's this cookies over here. If you look in storage, cookies, and then click on localhost, you can see that I don't right now have any cookies in here. Okay, so there's no cookies here. And let me just show you what happens here. If we do this session start, I'm gonna go back here, make sure you save this head file, and we're gonna refresh this. And now you can see that there's a new cookie here called PHP session ID, and it's got this random string here. And this random string is going to get sent back each time every time now that I do something, or I submit a form or navigate to a new page or refresh my page, this cookie is going to be sent along to our Apache server, and it's going to identify us as part of the same session with this session value right here in this session ID. So that's how PHP can track the person from one page to the next, basically. Okay, so that we needed to do that. Now the other thing that we need to do here, and a lot of people don't do this, but you probably want to make sure that there's not already a session set. And so one way that we can do that is just with an if statement. And we can use a function. Now we're going to say not, so this is a negative. You use the exclamation point, and this means if not. So if this evaluates to false, is set. This is another built-in PHP function to see if something is set. And we're just going to we're going to look for $_session, and that is a super global that is given to us. And if that's not set, okay, so this is a PHP sets this up for us if there's a session starting. And if I will do this here, and I'm going to move this inside of that if statement. So that session start's only going to happen if there's not already a session started. Okay, that's what we're trying to do here. So let's just for the sake of seeing what's going on here, let's just go ahead and var _dump, and we're gonna dump that session. So let's just see what that is. So if I hit refresh now, did I spell that wrong? Let's see, php.net, and let's go ahead and double check me here. $_session variables. So this is our start. I guess what we'll do is let's session auto start. I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but let's see. Let me move this session here underneath this. And then let's go back and refresh. Okay, so we have an empty array. That's fine. This is kind of, don't worry about this. Just put this in this if statement here. And basically what it's doing is checking to see if the session has been started. Now, we weren't saving any sort of special session, anything in our session yet, but it was set. So it got in here. So the first time we loaded it, for some reason it was not set. So maybe this if statement's not completely necessary, and that's kind of an older thing, but go ahead and do it. It's not going to hurt anything for now, and maybe I'll look deeper into that off camera and try to understand what's changed with PHP or my knowledge. But I do believe that this is good practice to put this in the is set and just check to see if the session is already started. Okay, so but basically what the session start does, and actually we can store stuff in these sessions, and we will be doing that in this course. But in order to use sessions, we have to run the session start. Okay, so we spent enough time on that. I don't want to bore you or overcomplicate it, because honestly, I just know that I need to start it at the beginning of the thing if I'm going to use sessions, and I don't think too much about it other than that. So if I seem a little unknowledgeable about this session stuff, that's because I don't really spend much time trying to understand it. But I do know that it's the way for us to store things in our session, and we can even carry stuff over to the next reload with that session. And that's what a lot of people do with error messages and stuff like that. So if they do, if they basically, if you have a successful form post or something, or you save something, a lot of times people will put a message in that and then redirect them to another page and then show that message. A lot of times they call those like session flashes or session messages, and they do that by storing information in the session. And so we have to do this in order to be able to do that. So basically it sets up the session, and it actually stores that that cookie, as we've seen right here in the client's browser. Okay, so enough about that. The next thing that we want to do is right here in the head, we're also going to want to include, we're going to have a file that's going to have a lot of our functions in it, and because we want to be able to use our functions throughout our site. So let's go ahead now and just try that out. Let's put require. Now we could use include here. We just talked about how include includes a file into another file. The problem is we want to make sure we don't accidentally do this multiple times with these functions. And so PHP gives us a require once, which is pretty much the same thing as an include, except for if this doesn't find what we're trying to require. So let me just show you. We're going to create a file called functions.php. And if we require this, now we haven't created this file yet, but it's the same as including. But if we won't try to require and refresh, okay, now we get a fatal error. And this kills our script, because this doesn't exist, because we're saying, hey, our script requires that this exists. So we need to load it in, and the once is saying, hey, make sure this only loads one time. If it's already loaded, don't load it again. So require once. So I'm going to go ahead and close that up just a little bit there. And let's go ahead and create that functions.php file now. Functions.php. And now we can just save, and we won't get an error because now it's able to require that in. Now we don't have anything in that functions.php, but now when we create any of our files, all we need to do is include this head, And the beauty of it is when we include the head at the beginning of our file here, it's actually going to start our session if it doesn't already exist, and it's going to require our functions.php and give us all of our beginning boilerplate HTML, which will also link in our style sheets. Okay, so this is a way that we can just make it a little more sane for us to build. So everything that goes in here now is just going to be what's just supposed to be on that page. And then of course we will end it with this foot.php down here at the bottom. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and create just a couple functions here to make sure that's working and to get us going. So there's just a couple functions that I want to create. The first one, you know how we did the var dump? Well, we're going to be needing to test stuff as we go. So let's go ahead and do PHP. We'll open some PHP tags, skip down a few lines and close them. And then inside of these PHP tags, let's create a function here. So just type the word function. And then we're just going to call this D&D, and that's just short for dump and die. And then we're going to have some sort of data that's passed in as a parameter. So then open and close your curly braces here, and anything that happens in this curly brace is going to be related to this dump and die function. So what we want to do is we want to echo, because we want to put our dump inside of these pre-tags, which makes it much easier to read. So just go ahead and echo a pre-tag, skip down a few lines, and we'll echo a closing pre-tag like this. Oops. And then inside of that, what we want to do is var dump our data. So whatever we pass in here, this is the dump part, and then these echo tags will format it in a way that's a lot easier to read for us. And then the D&D, or the die part, is just going to be the die and then semicolon. Okay, so now let's test that out. If we go back to the register here, let's right here in the top underneath our include.php, now we should just be able to use that. So let's just do D&D, and then inside of here, let's just do $_session again. Now this is going to be an empty array, but if this works, if it kills the page and shows that, and you can see that it does kill the page, and we have this empty array right here, that is what it's dumping to the screen. So that's going to be very useful for us as we go through. We can kind of debug and see what our variables have in them as we go, to see why code isn't working, or just to help us develop. So this is just a developer function. You're not going to use this in most cases to print anything to the screen. This is just to use while we're developing. So that's going to help us out a lot there. So that's one function. The other function is, see this errors right here? What I want to be able to do is put this into a function where we're going to print out our errors only if there are errors passed into it. And so the way that I want that to work is we're going to open some PHP tags, and we're going to create a function called display errors, and we're going to pass our errors into that. Okay, so for now, let's just create let's just pass in, and that's going to be an array, and this is going, let's just put error 1, and we'll even put an error 2 there. Okay, and we'll do a semicolon, and then we will close those PHP tags. Okay, now these PHP tags, so we no longer want this to be on this page as well. And what we're going to do here is go back to our functions.php, and outside of this function, so after the curly braces, we are going to create a new function, and we're going to call that display errors. Okay, and then it's going to take one parameter, and that will be our errors array. And then we'll open and close some curly braces there. And what we want to be able to do is take, now we had this unordered list with a class of errors, and then inside of that we're going to have a list of LIs that are our errors. So all we're going to have to do here is we're going to echo, and then I'm going to use single quotes, open a UL space class equals and give it a class of errors, close the double quotes, and then close the tag, and then we'll just put a semicolon. We'll skip down a few lines, and let's just go ahead and echo out our closing UL tag. Don't forget your semicolon. So this function, when we call this function, is going to echo our opening and closing UL elements, and it will have the class of errors in there. The next thing that we want to do is actually go through our errors and do an LI for each one of those. So what we can do is we can use our for each loop that we learned about, and we can say for each errors as an error. Then we can, so every error that's in here is going to loop through those and assign them to a variable called error inside the loop. And then what we're going to do inside the loop is echo an LI, and we'll close that LI. And then what we're going to do here, we could break, I'm going to show you two ways to do this. So we could do some or some single quotes here, and then we could concatenate our error in the middle of this like this. So what this does is it will echo a string with the LI tag in it, and then we're going to concatenate onto that our error from our PHP, and then we're going to, at the end of that, we're going to concatenate on our LI. So that's one way that we can echo this. Another way is we can use double quotes. Now this has to be double quotes to work, but this is called a string literal. So we can put double quotes here, and we can say LI, we'll close our LI tags, and then in the middle there, what we can do is just do our opening and closing curly braces, and inside of that we can just put our error injected right into that string right there. And that's a little bit of a cleaner way to echo that out probably than breaking out of that string and then concatenate on and then concatenate on another string. Now, there's nothing wrong with the way that I showed you. I just think this is a little nicer way to display this. And this, what makes this the string literal here is basically it's going to go ahead and do all that for us. So it's going to inject this error right inside of this string on that echo statement. Okay, so that will work. The other thing that I want to be able to do here is I don't want to print. Now, if this is empty, if this errors array is empty, it's not going to print any LIs, but it will print this UL with a class of errors here. And I don't necessarily want to do that. So what we're going to do is at the very top here, we're going to put a guard statement here. And what we're going to do is say, hey, if empty, now PHP gives us a function called empty. Now that's built in already. We don't have to create that one. But we're going to check if that errors array is empty. And if it is, we're going to do something. Now, what I'm going to do is just an inline if statement here, and we don't have to do the opening and closing curly braces on an inline if statement. But we're just going to type return false semicolon. And this whole line right here is just an inline if statement. And what it's doing is it's going to say, we're putting it at the top here, and it's going to check first. If this errors array is empty, return false. So as soon as this function returns, nothing below that's going to happen. So it's not going to echo out this unordered list or any of these list items. Of course, it wouldn't have done that anyway if this was empty, because this just loops through each element in that array. And it's not going to echo out this this closing tag either, because it's returned. Now, if there are errors in this, it will indeed just skip past there, because it's not going to evaluate to true, and then it will do all of this. So let's save that now and go back and refresh. And now you can see I have this error 1 and error 2. Now we still have this other one, so let's go back to our register.php file, and now we can remove this unordered list that we had statically put in our page, and now we have a dynamic errors list. And so up here in the top of our page now, what we can do is we can actually create, let's just create a variable that has an array stored in it, and we can put our error 1 and our error, oops, sorry about that, brain fart, and our error 2 right here. And then inside of our display errors, instead of just putting these in here like this, we can actually just pass in that variable into that function. So we're going to create the variable up here, and we're going to store inside of that variable this array with 2 errors. We're going to pass that variable into our display errors function when we're calling it, and then our function is going to use those errors, and then it's going to check, is it empty? Well, in this case, no, because we put 2 in there. So then it's going to go down here and it's going to echo an unordered list with the class of errors, and then it's going to loop through those and assign each one to a variable called error, and then it's going to echo out a list item with the error inside of that. And then when it's done doing that loop, it's going to come down here and it's going to echo out the closing UL tag. So now if I refresh, go back to the page here and refresh, now I have error 1 and error 2. Now, of course, those aren't real errors. So what we're going to do now is go back up here, and we're going to actually make that errors array empty. Okay, so now we have this errors array at the top of our page, and we're passing it into our display errors. So now what should happen is it's going to see that, and it's going to be empty, and it's just going to return false here. So when it does that, there's no thing. And in fact, if we inspect the page, you'll see that there's no, inside of our page here, you don't see the UL at all. And that's because that function is not running because of our guard statement right at the top here that's checking if it's empty and returning false. The other way that we could have written that is we could have said if not empty errors, and then we could have put our opening and closing brackets, and then we could have put all of this inside of that if statement. So that's another way to write this, but I think it's a little cleaner if you excuse me, if it's a little cleaner to leave this all outside of that nested if and just put a guard statement at the top that it has to get passed. So you can imagine these if statements are just like, it's going to run through however many of those you have, and it won't make it to this code because of this return. So that this guards is called a guard statement because this guards the rest of this from running if a certain condition isn't met. And in this case, we wanted to know only do this if errors has something in that array. All right, so there we go. I think we're going to wrap it up for this video. We've created, just to recap what we've done here, we've made it a lot easier to work with any files by separating the code a little bit and taking the duplicated code and putting them in the head and the foot of these two files. Now every file we create, we can just include the head and the foot right here. And then what we've done is inside that head, we've started our session. So now we can use the session commands within PHP, and we can store things in our sessions. And then we also required our functions.php. And for now, all we have are these two functions available to us that we've created. The D&D, which is going to help with debugging and development function, and this display errors function, so that we don't have to type out that UL. We could just call this display errors wherever we need them. All right, so in the next video, we're going to continue on with our registration process. And let me just see what I had on my syllabus here. I think in the next video, we are going to talk a little bit about security and securing some of the information that a user puts into these forms to make sure they're not putting anything malicious or something that could break our website or expose any sort of data. So there's a couple different things we have to do there. We're going to talk about that a little bit in the next video and create a function to handle that. And then we'll move on to form validation to make sure that they have the necessary checks in place to make sure they've filled out all the information and filled it out correctly so that we could store that information in the database. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please comment, like, subscribe, and share these videos with someone who needs them. That's the best way you can help me. And go ahead and comment on whatever, if you're watching this on BitChute or Rumble or YouTube, I would recommend watching this on BitChute or Rumble, just to help out alt tech. But if you are watching this on YouTube, it doesn't matter. Go ahead and give me a like, a thumbs up, a subscription. By the way, I just want to, I don't know if I've mentioned this yet. I did mention earlier on that I was going to stop posting to YouTube. And this is just, I'll just tell you guys a little story here if you're still with me. So I made a video talking about how I wasn't going to be posting to YouTube anymore. And some people were like, why are you still posting to YouTube? Well, the funny thing is I've discovered, and my alarm's going off. Let me just stop that. I've discovered that, see, this is how you win in life. I got up 2 hours before my alarm went off on my phone and started working on these videos for you guys. So it is quite early. You can probably tell that I'm a little dumber than I usually am because I'm just still trying to wake up. But anyways, back to the story. I discovered that on Rumble, I can actually give them rights to my videos. And they will auto post those on YouTube for me. And since I already had 10,000 of you guys who watch me on YouTube, any sort of ad revenue that I make, actually some of that goes to Rumble. So I thought it was kind of beautiful that YouTube and the ads from YouTube is actually helping fund alt tech. And so it's just my little way of contributing to alt tech other than just putting content on there. Even the people who watch it on YouTube now are supporting alt tech. And I thought that was kind of cool. So that is why I decided to start putting back on YouTube, just so that any sort of ads that are watched actually help Rumble succeed. And also it allows me to stay in contact with all of you beautiful people that I've gotten to know and love over the last 5-6 years that I've been doing this. How long has it been now? 6 years, I think, something like that. All right, guys. Well, I will see you. You would think after 6 years I'd be better at doing this. Maybe I'm just not that good. And maybe this is as good as I'm going to be. I'm just probably I'm not even a great developer. I'm pretty good. I'm not the best developer at my job. But I am very, very good. Probably above average. But, I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Like, I do all kinds of stuff, but I love to develop. I love to teach you guys. And so if you could just bear with my inability to speak and just my ums and if you guys can put up with that, then God bless you. Anyway, see you in the next video. Let me get to my thing here. Peace out.